Okay, this video is going to do a few of the explanations that would be needed for this review for Chapter 1. So we're not going to do the whole thing. It's just going to be certain slides. And so we're going to go on to here and just discuss this a little bit. The important thing to understand is that quotation marks are not needed when printing numeric data. And so this is a calculation, and so because there's no quotation marks, so this is not a concatenation operator in this case because it's adding two pieces of numeric data together. So that's why it does actually come up with 48. Now in this particular one, number 2, there are quotation marks around the numeric data, so the numeric data really is a string. So it's literally going to print the calculation 45 plus 3. So this is a string because of the quotation marks. In this case, the 45 is a string, even though it looks like a number. It's a string because it's in quotes. And the 3 is numeric data. Now you can't add a string and numeric data. It's like saying 5 plus pens is, something. You can't add those together. So that's where this becomes a concatenation operator. So it's joining together a string and numeric data. So that's why it's 453. The next one, number 4, this is of course a string because it's got quotation marks, and it's got a 45 numeric data and 3. Now the compiler is working from left to right, so the very first thing it takes is just this much of this argument, so to speak, within the print statement. So it's taking a string and then a number which can't be added together, so this becomes a concatenation operator. So therefore that's why it's going to print the word cat, and then it's going to join the 45 to it because it can't add those together. So now, of course, obviously cat 45 is a string, and so this plus sign now is a concatenation operator because you can't add a string and a number. So therefore it's going to concatenate or join to what's already there, this 3. So it's going to be cat 453. The last one on this page, you have a numeric data and a numeric data. So those can be added together, so the plus sign now is an addition operator, and so it performs the addition. Because remember, the compiler works from left to right. So the first thing it deals with is adds two pieces of numeric data which become 48. Okay, so now as we continue working on, you have a 48 plus a string which can't be added together, so now this plus sign here becomes a concatenation operator, and so it's 48 cat. That's what's going to be printed. Alright, so that's how that slide goes. On this particular slide, what's going to happen is that what we want to do is we want to make this print cat 48. Now right now, of course, as we already went through, this is cat 453, but we want it to print cat 48 without changing the cat, the 45, or the 3. And so we can't let me see. So we got to keep the cat 45 and 3. Now the only way you can do that then is that you need to put parentheses around the calculation, because it's just like the order of operations that you already know from algebra, is that the parentheses are going to be dealt with first. So instead of the compiler going from left to right, it sees the the parentheses, says I got to do this first. So this is a 48. And so now this becomes a concatenation operator, so it's cat 48. So that's how that works. Okay, now we're going to explain how the output on these three work, and we're going to do that by let's first of all get rid of that, and we're going to go and do each one on its own slide separately. And so we'll take the first one and we'll go here, and this is actually a good way to illustrate the insertion point and everything. So the key thing here is it says first of all to print 18, and so you print 18, and it has an ln. Now what the common problem, and what we found when we were going over this in class, is that students would look over here and say, oh well, this print says to print on the same line. We don't see this line of code though yet. You got to finish this line before you can go on to the next line. So this line here says print 18, and then this part here says move the insertion point to the next line. So we hit enter, and you can see the insertion point is blinking. So the next thing that gets printed is going to be printed at that insertion point. And so it's going to print car, and so car. But now you look at this and it says don't go to the next line because there's no ln. So notice the insertion point is blinking right after the R. That means the next thing that's printed is going to go right there. And so what's printed on the next line now is a 22. And then the ln says now go to the next line. So go to the next line, and there's the insertion point blinking. The next thing that will be printed will be start at that insertion point. The next thing that's going to be printed is a space, because that's within the quotation marks. Oops, should have done that. Whoops. And so space, and then brown. And now the fact that it says there's no ln really doesn't do anything for the output, just the insertion point stays there. So this is what these 4 lines of code will print. Alright, so let's go to the next line, our next problem. This is the one that's the most challenging. And so in this one, first it says to print a space, bat, space, because that's what's in the quotation mark. So we go space, bat, space. And then we look here, we go, well, there's no ln, so therefore the insertion point is going to stay on that same line. So there you see it's blinking. So the next thing that's printed is 17, so it goes right here where the insertion point is. Now there's no ln again, so the insertion point stays there. The next thing that's printed is ball, so now it prints ball. Now in this case there is an ln, so now after printing ball it goes to the next line down, and there's the insertion point blinking away on the next line down. Now the last print statement says to print a 4. Does it say to print 2 spaces? Well, no, because it's not in quotation marks. And since there are no quotation marks, all the compiler sees is a 4. It doesn't see spaces. So the 4 is going to be printed right there. So that's how this one will work. Okay, let's go to the next one. In this case, it's going to print bat and a space. And then the ln says go to the next line. And I did this because it's a practice for students to practice. Don't look at this line yet. Wait until you're done with this line. This line says print bat and a space and then go to the next line down. That's what it says. You don't see the next line yet. So we go to the next line down. There's the insertion point blinking away. And so the next thing that it says to print is 52. And then the insertion point doesn't move, which really doesn't affect the output because we're done now. Alright, so that's how that works. Alright, I think we have one more thing to look at. Or actually we don't. That's it. Everything else is self-explanatory.